I think we should get started, and we can hope for Eric and Miles as well. So this is the Maine Recovery Council Finance Committee, and we'll do a quick round of introductions for the benefit of everyone and for anyone watching after the fact on recording. So I'm Benjamin Mann. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of Finance of the Department of Health and Human Services. I also serve as the Treasurer of the Maine Recovery Council. I'll go over to Pat.
Hi, my name is Pat Kimmel. I'm a recovery ally, and I am the current chair for the Maine Recovery Council. Welcome.
Courtney.
Hi, everybody. My name is Courtney Gary Allen. Can you hear me? Okay, I just connected my Apple headphones. So my name is Courtney Gary Allen. I am the organizing director of MERAP and a person with living experience of substance use and the co-vice chair of the Maine Recovery Council. Todd?
Good afternoon. My name is Todd Brackett. I'm the sheriff in Lincoln County.
Mary.
Hello, my name is Mary Coyne, and I'm the coordinator for the Maine Recovery Council.
Brendan.
I'm Brendan O'Neill. I'm with the Attorney General's office. I'm not a member of the council.
Haley. Haley.
Haley Tranco, also with the Attorney General's office, also not a member of the council.
Okay, so thanks for everyone joining today. We have a packed agenda, so I will try to guide us through this. We'll do a quick budget update off the top. I thought we could provide a brief overview of time spent at the Appropriations and Financial Affairs Committee as well, just very quickly, for transparency purposes. And then we will talk about contract payment schedule, particularly for Piscataquis, and also the treatment and application of admin costs, the budget form for the application that's under development. Mary can lead that, and I think Brendan can contribute to the first two items. The distribution of funding and whether or not how that will align with our priorities and the work that the Grants Committee is doing, and treatment of funding that's prepaid early. And are there any other agenda items that folks wanted to handle today? Okay. So just quickly off the top, we'll do this for the full Recovery Council meeting. Welcome, Miles. Just do you want to quickly introduce yourself? We're just getting started.
Hi, everyone. This is Miles Willett, the Maine Recovery Council, someone in long-term recovery and clinical supervisor at an outpatient treatment facility. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I just went over the agenda, and we're going to go right into the first agenda item, which is budget and funding update. So there are updated actual payments received and estimated payments on the Attorney General's website for the Maine Recovery Council. I summarized them in a quick spreadsheet. I'll just share my screen so that we can look at that briefly. If Haley gives me approvals to do that.
Should be all good now.
Yes. Okay. So updated actuals to date. We have 18.8 million in our account, and I just made a note here that we are expecting more settlement dollars the rest of this year. And there's been some changes, as we know, about the timing and the amounts of settlement payments. So, sorry, I just wanted to provide a quick summary of that. So I should have done this in reverse order. The original estimate through the end of this calendar year was about $35 million. The updated estimate is about $36 million, so it has not changed that much. At least, well, a million, it depends on your definition of what $1 million is, I guess, which is significant, but in as a percentage terms is not that significant. And the amount of, I just included the fiscal 25 number too, just for reference. That has not changed that much either. It's gone down a little bit in this the updated amounts that we are anticipating receiving in 25, just by about $300,000. I do, any questions about that?
Ben, I was wondering, could you help me understand this in relationship to the budget that we all agreed on? Like 35
Exactly.
million seems like a lot, but I know we all agreed that we wouldn't spend it all this year. So
Exactly.
how does that work? Where are we at with
Yep.
what we agreed we would spend?
Thank you. That's a perfect segue. I was going to bring up the budget that we recommended and approved from the Maine Recovery Council, along with a rack up of current commitments that we've made. So, and we can have a discussion of adjusting that budget. I think that's appropriate for this committee to do right now. This isn't the prettiest spreadsheet I've ever made, and I want to create a more permanent one. I'll work with the AG office and Mary on that, but I think it gets the job done for now. So I will share my screen again. Hold on one second. I have too many things open. Okay, so this should look familiar. I will, this was the original flow of funds coming into the state with the different examples, and we approved example. We have this recommendation to the council. Remember that we did 10 million ongoing and 5 million one time in year one, which is $15 million, and the same budget for year two. I will switch to this other sheet that I just created. And I want to acknowledge that I did not adjust for the updated flow of funds that just got updated last week on the, so that extra $1 million that we're getting this calendar year is not factored into this. This is just the original budget that we approved and our current commitments. So I moved away from the one-time and ongoing aspect, just to the total amount that we approved by year is here in row 40. Is this big enough for folks to see? But so the total budget that we approved is here in row 40. And you can see try to create the 3% school set aside, which is obviously funding for activities, but I just netted it out of the total just so we're accounting for it. I did a catch up for the first year, the first 2 years of the school set aside, which comes to about $1 million. And then I have an overview here of the December 2023 approvals that we made, separated into year one and year two. And then the admin costs, I did just an average of recent months annualized. So we would spend about $120,000, $110,000, $120,000 if the funding continues as it is currently. So that leaves an available balance of about $8 million in year one and close to $12 million in year two. I want to take a closer look on the change in the flow of settlement dollars coming into the state to see if we should be adjusting our budget because of that, if that makes sense, which is essentially what I understood your question to be, Courtney.
Right. Just so that the public hears my question. My question in the chat was, Wouldn't you say we got an extra $1 million this year? Is it really extra $1 million, or is it allocated in future years because we're going to have some money in the bank so that we can be responsible with the way that this money increases and decreases over time?
Yep, thanks. I can't see the chat when when I'm screen sharing, so thanks for saying that out loud. It's two things, honestly. I think about half of it is the interest that we were not accounting for in the first place, but it's also a timing aspect of settlement dollars coming in, basically prepaying and the settlement dollars changing. So we've further accelerated the payments in this year as opposed to the out years, which is something we want to account for, and we've discussed that before. But it's also the total amount relative to what we originally budgeted for has grown because we are collecting interest payments on the principal that's in the account. So I specialize in complicated answers, but it's two different dynamics going on at the same time there. Miles?
Hi, Ben, something we had talked about in the grants committee, and it might have even been in the full council meeting, I'm not sure, but we had brought up admin costs and maybe looking to hire potential more folks to help Mary out. So I was just wondering if that's something that we talk about here. Maybe we should budget a little bit more for administrative costs or for extra help going forward.
Completely agree. That
Yeah,
is
I
our
don't-
next agenda item, or maybe agenda item
Oh.
2. So we'll cover that in more detail in a moment. It's a
Thank you. I didn't even
perfectly
see that.
appropriate time to bring it up, though, because I do think I'll make a note on that. And again, that's not a final spreadsheet. I'd like to make it a little bit more user-friendly and obvious of what we're doing, but I do think we should likely budget for increased administrative costs coming from the council, because I think if anything, our costs for capacity and resources will only grow over time, and using this year as the basis for what future years will probably undercount that. And again, that's not a decision that I'm making or we're making. I think it's just, if we agree as a committee, I think it makes sense to increase those costs in the out years. Pat?
My question is quick. When you say year 1 and year 2, we have 7.97 in year 1, about 11 in year 2. What year are you talking about? Is that the year that begins July 1, a fiscal year, state year? Or is that January, like the calendar year? Which year is that?
Great question, and I misspoke, so I'll just reshare this spreadsheet.
Okay.
Originally, again, I didn't, year 1 was, it's important to talk about the actual year we're talking about, then also year 1 and year 2, because not everything lines up. Year 1, I assumed was 2022, at the end of 2022 was when the Recovery Council was formed. So year 2 was last year, 2023. So we are currently in year 3 of the Recovery Council, calendar year 3. So when I said 1 and 2, that was actually year 3 and 4, because we're going to push out. Yeah.
Okay, so the numbers you gave us are really year 3 and 4. The 7.97.
I'm sorry, they're 2 and 3. They are these 2 years here,
Okay, so
23
it's
and 24.
2 and 3.
Wait, now I'm more confused.
Yeah, I'm with you, Courtney.
So let me clarify. So in 2023, we didn't spend $7 million that we could have spent. Almost $8 million. And now we're in a new year, which is 2024. And in that new year, we have $11 million. For a total of $19 million-ish.
And then you have to subtract out the 9 million we spent.
No, that's already subtracted.
Okay, that's
I
already.
think. Hold on, Ben, can you redo this and clarify for us? We just scratch and start from.
Yes, I was right the first time. I'm sorry. I have too many cells hidden here, and we did not push out any funding in it's 24 and 25 is what here, I'll reshare here just so.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yes,
So we have a $8 million to spend in 2023 and $11 million to spend in 2020. No, I'm sorry, $8 million in 2024. We are currently in 2024 and $11 million to spend in 2025 calendar years.
yes. Yes.
Yep. Okay. That makes way more sense.
And I will just, yeah, that assumes the original flow of settlement dollars coming in. So I will update this based on the updated flow of settlement dollars, which will adjust those numbers slightly.
And have you scrapped this idea of for one time and ongoing?
I haven't scrapped it. I think I just didn't want to keep saying 10 million for ongoing, 5 million for one time, and just we have a budget of 15 million in this year and next year, but I still think we need to keep in mind the expectations about ongoing funding versus one time.
Okay.
Sorry, it's a little complicated, but any other clarifying or substantive questions on the budget? Okay. Any Brendan, any other updates, since I know we just had a council meeting, but anything, any other changes on settlement, incoming settlement dollars or the timing of that?
No, just to just quickly recap, that the council. Let me just to recap. 2 payments came in on the 15th, which were advance payments of future years obligations of 2 of the 3 distributors, and it's our understanding that sometime, anytime in the next few weeks, we will be getting additional payments that will come in from the 5 new settlements. On that, the direction we were given was, sometime after May 21st. It is now, it's obviously after May 21st. And it's my understanding the settlement administrator is, doing the work
March
of
21st.
Did I say, what did I say?
May. You said
No.
May.
Wishful thinking. Yeah, March 21st. So the payments are expected, anytime, and it's really the settlement administrator is doing the work of, trying to get billions of dollars out the door. And we'll wait to hear from them when that happens.
Good, thank you. Courtney?
I'm sorry, I have another question. When you say we have $7.97 million,
2024. Does that include or not include the 1.05 for schools?
That 1.05 is netted out of it. So if we did not use the amount of the set aside for the first 3 years for schools, it would increase the amount that we would spend by 1.05 million.
I'm sorry, I need you to say that in layman's terms.
Is
that an additional 1.05 million that we need to spend on schools on top
Yes.
of the 8 million?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yep. And we can talk. I welcome feedback on how to represent the school set aside. It's like I have it the way that I have it represented now is like we're not, the recovery council isn't making that decision, but I think there's different ways to represent that. It's still obviously going to go towards activities in service of what the settlement dollars are for. So It's just, it feels a little different than decisions that the council will be making, though. We just want to make sure that it's for a discrete purpose and we're accounting for it separately.
Well, I think the council still makes the decision, but we have to spend it on schools, right, Brendan?
Yeah.
So it's like it's like an
it's a
admin
little
cost.
more, it's a little more restricted than that. I mean, the council makes the decision and we have to spend it on the things in the school's MOU.
Okay, so then it's just like we get this amount of money, we're spending this much on admin, we're spending this much on schools as defined by the MOU. And then this is the amount of money we have left, right,
Yeah.
Ben?
Yes, and I will change it, so we have an amount that we need to spend in total, and then I will net out the school after the fact, so we know we have the total amount to spend, and then the non-school allocation that we get to spend, which I think you'll probably like better if I think that'll be a cleaner way, because we need to make decisions for actually $9 million, not $8 million, but the school set aside takes up $1 million of that total unbudgeted 9 million in total.
Okay, so then we have like we have $9 million, but 1 million of it is the school's money.
Exactly.
And then 8 million of it is the other things we can figure out later money.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
And Ben, one last thing about the spreadsheets on our website, real quick. The updated spreadsheets, and we will update them again when payments come in the door, but the currently updated estimates spreadsheet, reflects the, sort of the years in which we understand payments are going to come in. But as this group has heard in the past, these things they've turned out to be a little more dynamic than the written settlements suggest. And for that reason, we have taken out, and Haley, correct me if I'm wrong about this, the information we had previously provided about settlements to Maine's tribes through their own settlement, because we're not party to those. We only have public information about those, and it's as things have become dynamic in the payments for the settlements that the Recovery Council gets money from, it's difficult to keep track of what's happening with the tribes and their settlements. And so rather than try to provide that information and get it wrong, I think we're just providing the information about where you can learn more about those tribal settlement payments. So we're not trying to hide anything. It's difficult to keep it all accurate.
Yep, and we can talk about making sure that that's factored in a way that everyone understands, and let's follow up offline on that. Anything else before we move along? We have several agenda items and about a half hour. I will do a very quick update on AFA. I welcome other thoughts. Gordon, myself, and Pat, along with the Attorney General, spoke to AFA for about an hour last week. I think it went fine. They did not push that hard to spend the Recovery Council funding, and the conversation evolved into more of a process update and the work that the council has been doing. Although I would underscore that there seemed to be a strong theme of coordination and alignment between the state, the Recovery Council, municipalities, and the Attorney General's shop. So something to keep in mind there. But I know Courtney was present for it, Brendan was present for it, Pat was there, Mary was there as well. Any other important highlights to note?
No, just quickly, I think you're right. There was a real talk about how do you coordinate the funds so they're not overlapping and that there's a better understanding. And it's probably a good idea to do that. So all our funding gets spent in ways, but I think they clearly understood that the money we can coordinate, but the decisions the council makes are the decision of the council.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'll add from the audience perspective, I was listening in. I think that it might be helpful to help the Appropriations Committee understand, and specifically to Senator Bennett's question during the Maine Recovery Council, that the appropriations in the legislature can fund things, and then the Maine Recovery Council can add additional funding to those things. I think he was very confused that, or not quite understanding or having clarity around the fact that, you know, the state can fund recovery community centers, the legislature can fund recovery community centers, and then the Maine Recovery Council can still additionally fund recovery community centers. So I don't know if there's a way for the Attorney General's office or somebody to help clarify that question to the Appropriations Committee, but I feel like it might be a little challenging for the rest of us who work in the legislature if there is a misunderstanding around, because they're worried about supplement versus supplant. So just helping to clarify that.
Yep, I think that's a good idea. We can think about process on that as well. I also think this is probably the most challenge. I'll say this now, well, who knows what the future holds, but I think this is probably the most challenging moment in time right now. We haven't operationalized everything we're going to operationalize, and we have an annual report that's due to the legislature that'll outline and identify what the Recovery Council's funding. So there'll be more information the next session that's publicly available, and we'll be further along in our activities too. So
I'm just worried they're not going to fund things because they think we're going to fund things, or that they can't fund things and have us fund things. And I don't know. There's some really good things on the table that they should fund.
Yep. Don't disagree. Okay. Let's do about 10 minutes on max on contract payment schedules, another 10 minutes on admin costs, and then another 10 minutes or so on the budget form for the application. Hopefully less, so we can get a couple agenda items at the end. So this is in no particular order, but let's start with the contract payment schedule, since I know we are trying to get the Piscataquis Recovery Center up and out. I'll turn it over to Brendan, if that's okay, to sort of frame up this agenda item.
Yeah, so this is just a repeat of the question that of the discussion that we had at the last council meeting, where I asked the question of is it the council's expectation that specifically for Piscataquis County that they're going to get a single one-time payment upfront of the money allocated to them, or is it going to be staggered? And if it's going to be staggered, what are the triggers for the council to agree to send out the next chunk of change? What is the structure or timing of that staggering, and what is the trigger that gets the next money out the door? I frame it in terms of my work. Piscataquis County is my priority, along with another contract I'm doing for the Attorney General. And tomorrow I'm going to be, for the rest of today and tomorrow, I'm going to be pulled away focusing on legislation before the Judiciary Committee. And then the rest of my week is, in theory, blocked off for working on contracts. All this to say, this issue of schedule and timing of payments and what triggers the next one in terms of what the council wants is setting up, an issue that to set up for, all of the future contracts as well. Once I have a better understanding of this, it'll be something I think that'll be easier for me to incorporate in future contracts. And it could just be, I know Ben's got a lot of experience, obviously has a lot of experience with this issue. Others on the call do as well. So, I'm just looking to turn into kind of literal terms how the council intends, or, this to happen in this first contract, which will influence and future work that we do.
Thanks, Brendan. Pat, you're on mute.
Mute. I could throw out an idea. So with this particular contract with Piscataquis, they need upfront money to purchase the building. So you're going to have to give them the money upfront for the building. I'm assuming we can talk a little bit about their renovations a minute, but in my head, and I don't know if you have the staffing to do it, in my head, it would make sense that you gave them the upfront money to buy the building, and then sent them monthly payments to run their facility, and then quarterly financially report to us where they are with their dollars. So we know if they're overspending or underspending.
Courtney?
I'm just throwing that out.
Yeah, Pat, I like where you're going, and I'm just going to try to build on that a little bit. I'm curious if maybe it could be that they get their building up front. I don't know how much that is, but they can tell us that up front for that. And then I would be more comfortable with quarterly payments up front or even a year up front. I have one grant where I get a check every month and I have to like submit my paperwork before they'll give me the next check. And there are some months where I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to be able to pay my staff by the end of the week. And it's like juggling, and I'm like literally running across town to pick up checks and whatnot. So I don't want that to happen, but I also don't want to just give all the money up front. And I don't know if anyone could meet me in the middle at quarterly checks up to a year. I would be comfortable.
I can tell you, I can meet you with quarterly. I could never go for a year.
Okay. That's closer.
Yeah, I could, because I get that, trust me. I used to get monthly payments that were always late.
Yeah, or I have a grant where they just write me a X check and we check in, every 6 months, and they trust me to figure that out. But
yeah, because the building is 145,000 up front.
Can I just ask, either way, monthly or quarterly or whatever, is the expectation that the money just goes out the door on that schedule, or is it in response to invoicing?
yeah, that's how I would do it. That's how I have to do it. So,
Which?
oh, invoicing. So the way that I have to do it is I have to provide a justification sheet of everything that I've spent, and then I send it to the grant makers and they cut the check after that.
So the reason I ask is, and that's helpful, I appreciate that. The reason I ask is because, as we've talked about, our office doesn't have the kind of setup that DHHS has for post-contracting administration, and I think there's a need for a conversation about, hiring an administrator, like an outside vendor or something like that, to help with this kind of thing. Because part of what this makes me think about is, all right, so an invoice comes in the door, I'm assuming it's a council member or multiple council members who will be reviewing that. The same would go for reporting. And then our office our office then has, the additional responsibility of monthly, getting a sign off on the invoice from various council members, organized by Mary, presumably. And then so either it's monthly or quarterly, our office is going to be, it has to be set up and ready to send a check out just for this one grantee. And so I just want to make sure, I understand that it's obviously simpler if the money just goes out automatically. It's simpler if it goes out on fewer things, if it's going up front versus if they're invoiced, so just trying to talk through those things.
Todd?
So I just wonder what's our goal here, right? And I'm worried about what's happening in Piscataquis County is pretty unique. It's probably different from, our other projects that we've talked about thus far, or existing projects. So, our goal here obviously and I hear a lot of folks who manage these kind of inputs, and I hear the shortcomings, like the check number shows up on time, which is my experience with the state of Maine. No offense to any state folks here, but and that's just not going to work in Piscataquis County, and you're going to leave them in a situation where and this whole idea, you leave them in a situation where they'll fall behind or not be able to get the place open or get things done. You know, what's our real goal here in the first year is to get them up and running. So you know, and I'm all about checks and balances, but it seems to me that we could find a way to get these folks their first year funding. And I personally would be okay with getting it up front, understanding that, you know, you've got a big chunk of, you need something to hang over their head for non-compliance, you know, or whatever the compliance is going to be for us. You know, you've always got that significant amount that's coming in the second year. Obviously, there needs to be some reporting. This whole idea of invoicing, I don't understand that. They're going to make up an invoice, or because they don't have the funds to prepay it and then get the reimbursement from us. It doesn't sound like they do. So it seems like a unique situation. I wouldn't want to let, while checks and balances are important and I support that, I wouldn't want it to prohibit what we're trying to accomplish here.
So I could go, let me switch my mind with the yearly thing, because I think, Todd, I hear you. These people don't have any money. To ask them to pay for things, they'd have to put it on a credit card if they even have a credit card. Most recovery centers get monthly checks from the state. That's how they do it. Then they report quarterly. My thing is, again, about accountability. I could give them the year check, but they'd have to report quarterly where they were financially. So we know if they're getting too deep, if they're getting in trouble, they're not spending enough, spending too much, so that we know that we're not slapped at the end of the year to say we gave them a bunch of money and they did nothing with the money. So I could go with that.
I agree with you, Pat. I think we should give them a year up front. And then I wonder if, to simplify this a little bit, if they could be required in the contract to do a 30-minute quarterly check-in with Mary and provide an update on the project and the financial situation. And then Mary, if you see concerns, you could raise it to the council level.
That feels doable from my end.
I want specifics from them about financials in writing. And it doesn't have to be some complicated thing. It just has to be, they budgeted this, spent this, just in writing, not just a verbal.
Pat, do you want to just write down, you know, what you want to hear from them?
Sure, I can send that to Ben or Mary.
Just a quick follow-up, if I could. I think, and maybe this is already considered or already in there. I know this was discussed at the last council meeting. They need to understand, or there needs to be something in the contract perhaps that says, listen, this is what we've agreed to. This is the total amount, X, Y, Z. There's no guarantee if you ask for a single penny more that you'll get it from the council moving forward, right? So, you know, things will happen, and yeah, I can't remember the first year budget. It was 300 and some odd thousand, right? Going from memory. You know, if it was 350 and they spend 360, that's their problem. You know what I mean? They're not going to get the next check from us unless they have some compelling issue that they could get back in line with everybody else and come back to the council. I just think that ought to be clear to them right up front.
100% agree. If I overspend that check that my grant maker makes, then nobody's getting paid, and I am a terrible executive director. And I should be fired. I don't know.
Just a couple clarifying questions. I don't think we've moved away from an invoicing approach. So folks are familiar with the state process. We only pay based on actual services rendered. So that is an after the fact. We are not discussing that here. We're talking about prospective payments before any services have been rendered, or buildings have been purchased, or buildings have been renovated, or staff have been paid. So everything, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is what we're talking about is prospective. So that is not how the state operates in the first place. And to that effect, I would be more comfortable personally paying on a quarterly basis prospectively as opposed to annually. But if we also have quarterly reporting, my recommendation would be quarterly, just so that they are living within the budget that we establish and it's all prospective payments already. But I realize I do business in a particular way here at DHHS, and there are other folks.
So Ben, how do you see that working in Piscataquis County, right? Because it's going to take more than a quarterly payment for them to purchase the building.
Yep.
And then
So
they
there's two different.
$50,000 to renovate it. I just don't. I think this is a unique project. I don't disagree with you. Under normal circumstances, I just think this is unique.
So here, I'll just share, because I was taking notes here. I'll share my screen again. And I actually, maybe I should have started with this, even though we're going to do what we want to do here. I do have a couple reference points on how DHHS has done upfront funding for projects, which is something that we normally do not do, but have gotten into the business of recently, particularly with SUD treatment beds, the last 3 rounds of funding that we've done. So just for your reference, our default approach for this is just for one-time capital costs for purchasing or buying or leasing and renovating buildings is a third, a third, a third. A third is once like permitting is all set up. A third is when construction is complete, and a third is when beds or whatever the services are ready for business. We did have this alternative approach based on a facility-specific need. I tried to remove all references to individual providers on these, but we did pay 50% upfront and then 25% when building renovations were complete and 25% when the beds were ready to occupy. I realized that, so that's just our options, and like we've ran into significant issues just for ways, examples like capital costs coming back double of what the original budget was. We had a provider not realize that they had a multi-$100,000 lease buyout need, so they could not actually do what they were planning on doing originally. But so there's going to be complexities. This is one provider, and we've been in contact with them a lot, or at least Gordon has. So what the notes I was just jotting down was building costs, a one-time capital cost up front. So I think that would be the $145,000 to buy the building, plus the renovation, plus any other peripheral funding that needs to go into that purchase. And then what I heard us discussing was I'm separating building costs, one-time building costs from the operating costs for staff and everything. And the operating costs would be either quarterly prospective payments or annual prospective payments. And then if they were annual, we could do annual reporting, or we could do quarterly reporting. And we would take their operating budget divided by 4 and have them, like, if they have $12 for staff every year and we divide it by 4, they have $3 each quarter. They report to us on a quarterly basis of how much of that $3 they spend that quarter, right? And that's basically that 30-minute check-in that I think Courtney suggested.
Yeah, and just to build on it, they could actually provide us with a document if that makes Pat feel more comfortable, a budget to actual document.
Yeah, it would be pretty easy.
But do that through Mary, and then if Mary, you see concerns, then raise it to the council level. Like, they haven't bought the building, they've never opened it, and they've spent all their money. I want to know about that, but I don't want to know about if they're on track and doing their things and it's fine.
Brendan?
So Ben, you were talking about prospective payments, and I sort of lost track a little bit whether sort of people are on the page of quarterly versus annual. Sounds like, let's just say quarterly prospective payments. And I guess my question is, does something trigger the prospective payments, or is it just automatic at the quarter mark? In other words, is the prospective payment contingent on getting reporting in that's approved and renewed?
Just my 2 cents here for the building costs, for the one-time upfront capital costs. I think there should be some sort of like some documentation about like they've signed a letter of intent, or I imagine they can't get to a purchase and sale without the funding, but like there should be some sort of formal engagement and documentation. on that front before the funding is provided. So we're under contract, obviously.
Before the funding is provided? I see. Okay, got it.
Well, I mean, we won't be able to make the payment if we don't have a contract in place with them anyway, so that it's sort of perfunctory. We like physically
Yeah.
can't pay them without an agreement in place. But that agreement should be predicated on some sort of like threshold levels of being like some, you know, the building, a banknote or something of whoever's selling the building to them, so that there's some formality here. The operating costs, I think the first time, there's nothing to show. I think we would make a prospective payment based on their quarterly budget or annual budget. But then thereafter, maybe it's predicated on the budget to actuals, the whatever the reporting mechanism we set up. And I think it's an opt-out type of thing. We plan on making the payment unless we have concerns based on that quarterly reporting. So that, you know, the default position is to make the payment. And if not, we would need to flag something. That obviously only works on a quarterly. If we're paying this on an annual basis, then it doesn't really matter because we would have paid all the funds that we have. Courtney?
I'm confused. Can we do a straw poll on, can we just make the decision on, does this part of the council want it to be quarterly or yearly? Where are folks at?
On the operating costs. I think
On the operating,
the
I think
capital costs, we're gonna we're gonna put a contract in place and pay them what they need for it to get set up on a one-time basis. I think we're all agreement there. Is that right?
I agree with that. I just don't know where we're at collectively as a committee around quarterly versus yearly.
Todd? We can't hear you for some reason, but you're not on mute.
How about now?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So just to clarify on Courtney's question, so you have your capital costs, and the first part of if the operational costs are going to go quarterly or payments are going to go quarterly from there on, will that first quarter go out the same time as the capital?
I think it would. I think right now it's structured as the same contract, and then there'll just be two different sections of the contract, and we'll pay, and they presumably will have staffing costs starting immediately. But I would envision that it would start at the same time.
Okay.
I do want to say just a word. As we're building, or as we're flying this plane, as we're building it, I'm learning more about, and that I'm sure Ben has intimate knowledge about how state accounts and payments from state accounts work. As some on the call know, we're trying to work through issues about how to get payment for Mary to go to the RX conference in Atlanta, and I'm learning about, which I didn't know about before, restrictions on funds that are in state accounts. And all this to say, this is helpful for me. I will take this to our, my office's, finance director and go over, this with him. And we'll talk about subsequent contracts as well. It's possible I may learn that there are additional things I need to do, or restrictions or steps or whatever. So with the caveat that has to happen still, and I may learn more there, this is helpful.
So I still don't know where we are. Could I just try a motion and see if it goes? I don't know.
Before you make your motion, make sure that in here, I don't know what you want to do with the 25,000 that put in for renovations. So there's 145,000 in a building cost, and they also have another line that's $25,000 in renovation.
145,000.
Well,
Yeah.
it's, if I'm the, what is, Brendan, when do you need to know? You don't need, I think I'm probably the only, am I the only one that thinks we should do quarterly instead of annually? Because I don't need to vote against it. I would like to operate by consensus. I can get behind this other approach if I want. I don't, but
I like quarterly.
quarterly,
Okay.
okay.
Where are you at, Miles? What do you think? Quarterly or yearly?
Yeah, no, I mean, and Todd kind of clarified that for me. I mean, after capital costs, I think, and especially if the first quarter is paid out with that, that way they can function. Then I would agree with quarterly payments, and then especially if they're meeting with Mary on a quarterly basis, I think that's fine. But there are going to be, you know, unique situations, but again, I want to make sure that those renovation costs and whatever else, I don't have that budget in front of me, but whatever they need, that, you know, for that first time funding, I'm not sure what the exact amount is. I don't know if that's going to be in the motion, but that's where I'm at.
Okay, so it sounds like the collective, and I'll go with the collective. I don't need to debate this. It sounds like the collective is that the motion would be to write the contract with a caveat, Brendan, that if you learn some things that we don't know at this particular moment, that we'll reconsider. That the motion would be to provide the Piscataquis group, I can't remember their name, with upfront cost for the building and renovations in year one, as well as a quarter of operating expenses. And this is where I get a little hairy. They would continue to be provided quarterly payments with the requirement to meet with Mary every quarter to provide a financial budgets to actual update, as well as a outcomes update. And if Mary is concerned, she'll raise it to the council before the next check goes out. But if not concerned, it will go forward. That was a very long motion. I hope I captured it.
I think it sounded great.
I second that motion. And then I think Todd has some discussion.
Yeah, so just I agree. The only caveat I would have is would it be possible, and would this be acceptable, Ben and Pat? That there may be to talk with them before we write that first quarterly check. Because there may be some other startup costs rather than just taking their operational costs and dividing it. You know what I mean? If the first payment was a little bit more than a quarter, then obviously the other payments are going to be reduced. But I just hope we can have some dialogue with them, that there may be some startup costs there that operationally in that first quarter that they should have a chance to weigh in on.
Yeah, what I heard Courtney's motion to be was all startup related activities. That was included in the budget, and I think we built in a little cushion in that, or at least, I mean, I know we plussed up the operating budget, but if we're saying that, but correct me if I'm wrong, Courtney, on
Yeah,
all
that's
startup related costs.
that's my motion. And could I have screen share for just 1 second? I just have something that I think might help us understand. So I think from this point, Todd, I think that they have an understanding of how we would like to make our payments, and then they could go and make a quarterly. This is a monthly spreadsheet for my payments from this particular grant that I'm talking about, but they could make it smaller and make it quarterly, so it would be these 3 months, and then let us know how much each of those quarterly payments are going to be. So pretty much just taking their budget and figuring out how they want to be paid on a quarterly basis. So I have to like put this is my budget, this is the check they send to me, right? Then I have to go in here and put these numbers in before they'll send me this next check. And
So
that's
that would
how,
allow them to modify that first quarter if they needed to, and then make up the difference in the next 2 quarters. In other words,
right. And I mean, I have to do it monthly. I don't get my check until I filled this part of my budget out, so they know how much I spent. But they could do it quarterly. Does that help, Todd?
I didn't see who had their hand up first. Brendan?
So I'm hearing for the building costs, 145 plus 25 for renovations. So 170,000 as part of that upfront one-time capital costs. And then I think I'll need someone to supply me with the first prospective payment for operating costs. And then we'll combine those two numbers. If I'm understanding this correctly, 170,000 plus the, whatever the operating cost first prospective payment needs to be.
That is my intention.
Mary?
I just pulled up the budget and I want to recommend that they have probably about 7 or 8,000, I'm doing the math quickly, in additional purchase costs. So like closing cost, building insurance, all that. So we might want to include that. And if folks are comfortable with it, what I can do, Brendan, to support the contract, is I can meet with Georgia and Barbara and ask them to fill out a spreadsheet, Courtney, similar to what you just shared. And that way we feel more confident around those quarterly payments.
I agree with both what you said, Brendan and Mary. We would just net out the one time, provide that upfront. The remaining amount is the quarterly payment. And sorry if my assumption, this was a 2-year contract, right? So we would divide by 8 the remaining amount. Just so we're all on the same page. There's 8 quarters in 2 years, so that we would make 1/8 of the remaining funding on the first month of every quarter whenever the contract gets encumbered. So that and now I realize I'm going down my procurement swim lane jargon, but I think that is basically what we're saying here.
Yeah. That's helpful for me. I also need to drop off the call.
Yeah. We are over time. We got to a fraction of this. I don't want it. We need to, do we need to vote on this?
Yeah, I think we just need to do a roll call. I second the motion.
So discussion's over. Haley, do you want to call a roll, or can we show hands? We probably can on Zoom.
Yeah, I got a call roll.
Okay.
Todd Brackett,
yes,
Courtney Gary Allen,
Yes.
Pat Kimball,
Yes.
Ben Mann,
Yes.
Miles Olet.
Yes.
That's everyone we have with us.
We are good. Sorry for not getting to everything. I would like to make these meetings 1.5 hours instead of 1 hour. I'm not going to go
Yeah,
to
that
2
makes
right
sense.
now, but 1.5 hours I think should suffice.
On which end do you want to go at 2:30 or start at 12:30?
Let's go to 2:30 if that
Go to
works.
2:30.
Yes.
Mary, just FYI, I'm sharing that spreadsheet with you. It is my actual financial data, so please do not share broadly, but just so that you have it.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
We'll follow up with more things to come. Thanks everyone for joining today. Apologies for going over.
All right, thanks all.
You.